Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited about this show today. Just did some freaking push ups with the guest, which is cool. Before I introduce you to them, here's a quote just for this episode. Storytelling is incredibly important to discover our history. Jay Hughes, family business counsel. Our guest today is a steward of their culture, is a great representation of the Nietzsche's if the student doesn't outshine the master, the student has let both himself and the master down. Somewheres around 1999 or 2000, Action Asphalt was founded with an idea of service, if I'm correct. And all these decades later, in a very kind way, I'm sure, putting all sorts of competitors out of business in Northern California just by leading the way, living its values. Our guest today is a good friend and community member, leader of our top contractor school community. I got to recently watch them teach in front of a lot of the people that we get to walk beside in business and I believe it was business development, sales, strategy. I was very excited about that. Basically, they grew up in business, and for the last 10 years, are working in the trenches, and are currently today the CEO of Action Asphalt. Travis Stokes is with us today. I'm excited. I watch you on Instagram, and now I get to learn from you on this Zoom. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate
Man,
it.
I'm
This is a long
excited to
time
be here,
coming.
Jay. I appreciate you, man, very much. And that's quite the intro. And I don't know if I'm deserving of all that.
I should
But
mention the library behind him is really sick and clearly a reader, and we'll talk about that today. But thanks for coming on.
thanks for having me, Jay.
I would like to. Were you always a learner? You like curious to learn and to grow and to develop, or did that come later after the more responsibilities came on you with the business?
Totally. Yeah. I think since I was a kid, man, I've always been a reader. And I think that developed into a learner over the years, but more a reader, right? And I think that was a product of growing up in the middle of nowhere, and 10 minutes from the closest gas station, out on property in the middle of Grass Valley, California. Beautiful, beautiful place to grow up. Had an amazing childhood, right? But grew up, basically an only child. I had siblings, but they were moved out of the house, and so a lot of time was spent by myself, and so picked up a lot of books. And so from an early age, that was mostly fiction books, but it turned into nonfiction, self-development, your sales, marketing, psychology, finance, everything business, right? As I, progressed through high school and college and then into, the professional years. But then I think that kind of turned into more of the growth and learning stage, right? And so I've always been a reader, but I think the second half of my life has been more of a learner, trying to grow and learn from as many people as I can so I can, help
Hmm.
better the world, help better the people that work for us, and help better myself in the process.
Do you remember the first book?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember the first book, but it was probably some kind of fiction, like a Harry Potter type book. I read all through the Harry Potters, but there was a couple other series before that for sure.
Did you like I like you ever heard of Dris Doran and the Dark Elf trilogies and all those kind of books,
I
or
haven't heard of those, but it was probably something similar to that, some kind of fantasy something.
a little too weird, Jay? I don't know about that one.
Yeah, maybe we. Shouldn't get into those, We'll talk about those after the podcast.
And now, what you said, Grass Valley. What had you guys there? Did you have a family operation there, or were your parents employed by others at that time?
No, so the business was based out of my parents' home at the time, and so Grass Valley was, really, and I can kind of get into it. I mean, that's where the company was started, right? My dad and my mom started it. My dad started with one truck basically, operating out of our side yard. We had 10 acres, but he had a little yard. And one thing about him is he is always perfectly organized, even when we basically had nothing, as a company, right? No inventory, no materials, no equipment, all that kind of stuff, right? And it was all perfectly organized in the side yard. And I remember as a kid growing up, I would help him load up either in the afternoon when he got back from the day and for the next day, or get up with him in the morning and help load up his truck so he could get out. And so, from an early age, I learned like organization and hard work. I mean, he would leave our house by 4 a.m., wouldn't get back till 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then he'd spend the next 2 hours, 3 hours after dinner in front of his computer. And and I was sending out estimates, bidding work, right, doing all the administration type stuff that requires to run a business. And really, it was just him and my mom for a long time, and then we had a good crew of guys, and that grew over the years. And now after 25 years, we obviously don't operate out of his house anymore, and I think that's a blessing for him. But yeah, it started in Grass Valley, California, and now our offices are in Sacramento. So
What do you think the motivation was then?
for him,
Yeah.
so he actually had retired from a company. He was vice president of sales for 20 years for a company, retired, and left on good standing, and wanted to do something really in retirement to kind of keep himself busy. He's always been the hardest worker in the room, right? And that's something that I respect, and I think I've learned the most from him is always try and be the hardest worker in the room. You probably shouldn't be the smartest person in the room, right? And I think that's good not to be, right? You want to surround yourself with people that are better than you, are smarter than you, are growing in different ways than you, people that you can grow from, that can inspire you, that can motivate you. But I think you should always, try to be the hardest worker in the room, right? And if you're surrounding yourself with people that are generally better than you, you might not be the hardest worker, but that's a product of yourself, right? And your own perspective. And so that's something that I learned from him, man. Always, always, always just work your hardest and do your best. And so I saw that from a young age from him. And so I've definitely carried that through to what I do today.
How did they meet, your parents?
My parents, they actually met at a gym.
No way.
I think my dad saw my mom running on a treadmill and went and struck up a conversation, and the
What a
rest is
G.
history. And they created me.
Do you know what he said?
I don't recall. I think it was something to do. She had a bracelet on or something, and it was commented on the bracelet, and then introduced himself and asked if she wanted to grab coffee. And luckily, she said yes, or I probably wouldn't be here today.
And this was before the asphalt, right? Because I got all sorts of puns right now.
This was before the asphalt.
That's so cool. So now, when you were young, did you envision yourself being in the trade, or did you ever view think about being an entrepreneur in other contexts or employed? What were you thinking about? Young.
When I was a kid, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, right? I knew I wanted to do something for myself though. And I wasn't quite sure what that was going to be. For a long time, I thought it might be real estate. My mom was a real estate agent, so the commercial part of it interests me a lot. And luckily, I get to utilize some of that interest in real estate now with what we do, because we service that commercial real estate industry, right? But I always knew I wanted to be in businesses myself. And I think that was mostly because I didn't like taking orders from people. And that's a good and a bad thing, right? As an entrepreneur. But I think once I got into later years, junior high, high school, I started working for my dad in the summers, and funny enough, like developed a passion for asphalt and concrete. And I don't think a lot of people in the world have a passion for asphalt. It's a weird thing to have a passion for, right? But it turned into now me loving the industry, right? And during the high school and college years, as I'd go back and work with my dad over the summers, it became apparent to me that this is absolutely what I want to do. And it's not just because of the asphalt portion of it, right? It's a very it's a rewarding industry in my perspective. We get to be outside, we get to transform properties, right? We get to work with a lot of different people in the community for real estate, property management, big commercial developers. We get to serve our team members, right? We have a good amazing group of crew members, administration folks, salespeople, right? All with different personalities, and I get to work with those people every day. So I think we get to serve a lot of different people in our community, and that was very rewarding to me. But really, it's just getting to do a lot of different types of things throughout the day, and I think that's what makes the construction industry fun.
Hmm. What, yeah, what for those that aren't familiar with asphalt at all, brass tacks, what is it and why is it relevant to people outside of?
So luckily, we have not gotten to the point as a world where we're flying cars yet. Obviously, we have a lot of transportation by airplane, but we're not at the flying cars yet. So that's a good thing for our business. So all the roads, parking lots, sidewalks are made from either asphalt or concrete, and asphalt is an aggregate mixed with an asphaltic oil, and it's mixtures of sand and different sizes of aggregate. And then concrete is Portland cement with mixed with different types of aggregate and water. And so they're both used to pave roads that we either walk or drive on every single day.
Why are there so many potholes in some states I'll leave out of it that I no longer reside in?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one, but probably a cause of poor work, man. Poor work. That's for sure. It is funny and I'm sure you've read a lot about this in your readings on philosophy and Roman history and all that. But the Roman roads seem to hold up better than our roads these days. So I don't know what the cause of that is, but maybe you know better than I do.
I wish I did. I mean, it's a great. Now I'm gonna have to go back in those some of those books. Like if uh, what 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 character traits do you think make your company Action Asphalt specifically successful?
I think number one is care for people. I think that is our absolute foundation and our focus in everything that we do. And it's not just our team members, but it's also our clients. It's the community. It's the properties that we work in, the people that live in those properties, that work in those properties, right? It's a major focus and care for people, and that spreads in everything we do. And it's our first thought with everything that we do in business, and that's sales, marketing, putting out estimates, right? Picking up the phone to answer an incoming call, right? Dealing with the people on the properties when we go in and we pave a road and we close down a roadway and people can't get around, right? And they're frustrated, dealing with people with empathy, right? And that's super important for what we do, and I think it's super important for business. At the end of the day, materials and equipment are as big of a portion of our costs in projects as is the labor and the people, right? But the people portion is so much more important than the equipment and the materials. And I think over the last decade or two, the industry has started to make that shift. But I think for years, probably the last 50, 100 years, and I mean, you can look back in history, right? People haven't been cared for. It really wasn't about the people. It was about the end result, right? The end product, the quality of the job. And that's absolutely important. Or it was about the equipment. Did you have the coolest looking trucks, the coolest looking tractors, right? Well, maybe that's important to your marketing, but at the end of the day, it's the people that get the work done. And so for us, that's been the biggest focus for our company. And I think why we have had so much success over the last 10, 20 years is our focus on making sure that people in whatever capacity are taken care of.
How do you care for the people?
Oh, man, in many ways, I think the first step would be communication. Open communication, right? Making sure that they understand that you care for them, that they are heard, that you're listening to them, not just talking at them, right? And making sure that they do feel cared for, right? And that can come through in a lot of different ways, whether it's just sitting there and having a conversation with someone, a team member that's going through a hard time. And that could be a personal hard time, or it could be a work hard time, right? Also, through the benefits packages that you put together as a company, right? But I think I think there's a lot of different ways you can care for people, but at the end of the day, the most important one would be the personal connection that you have with people, and how you show them that you're listening to their needs, wants, desires, goals, all that kind of stuff, and not just the more corporate side of caring for people, which would be, the benefits, the HR, the new company truck, the work from home balance, the work life balance, whatever it is. I think that's almost secondary to just that personal connection that you have with people.
What's worked to attract talent?
I think I think word of mouth has been the most successful thing for us, and I think that's a product of caring for people, right? We've done advertising through, a host of different online job boards. We've put our, things out in the newspaper. We've tried everything, but I think the most important one that we always fall back to is word of mouth. And you go, how do you create new employees through word of mouth? Well, it's by making sure that your people feel cared for, and you're creating a culture and a workplace where they want to speak highly of your company, right? Where they go to their friends, hey man, this place is a cool place to work, I think you should come here. If you got a crummy workplace culture, I doubt your employees are going to their friends, their family, people they know in the community and going, hey, come work at XYZ company. They're probably not out there doing it, right? So creating that culture would be the first step, so that they do
Hmm.
go back to those people and say, hey, come work here. This is a great atmosphere. The ownership, the executives, the leadership, they care about us, right? And I think you would do well here.
What would you say? What does it say if that's not the case? People wouldn't tell their friends.
Mm. I think then you should probably take a step back and look at your company. Is it a culture? Is it a company? Is it a workplace that people want to work for, right? If they're not going out and speaking highly of your organization, well, is there a problem with it? Do we need to look inward, and do we need to find out why? And maybe we need to sit down with those people, right? Hey, why don't you think that this is a place that your friends and your family and the other people in the community would want to work for? And finding that out, right? And I think feedback is one of the best things that we can have as leaders. And a lot of leaders aren't open to feedback, right? They rule with the iron fist. And that's personally not my leadership style, is ruling with an iron fist, right? I like that criticism, I like that feedback, right? Because that's what improves our organization, that's what improves our culture, and then which allows those employees to think so highly of their workplace that they go out and they speak highly of it.
How did you come to that philosophy that you like feedback or welcome it?
Mm, I think that's a great question. I think being open, being honest with yourself, being introspective, right? I think making sure that you're not acting as the expert when you're not the expert, right? And there's a lot of people on social media, for instance, that they act like they're the expert in whatever industry it is, right? And if you can have that growth mindset, that continual learning mindset, right, instead of I know everything. And that goes back to, like, for me, always wanting to be a learner, right? And reading, constantly consuming new information and trying to be better, but not ruling with that iron fist, and making sure that people feel that you have an open work environment where they can come to you with criticisms, with feedback, with, hey, I think we should do this different out on the job site, whatever it is. And I think if your employees don't feel that way, there's a lot of room for improvement that you're leaving on the table, right? And you might be doing things well as a company, but you could be doing them better.
Yeah, you made me think of like people leave North Korea, people and then people in America, they might try to get their family over here. You have two distinct cultures. Like, so it's really powerful what you're saying about the referrals. Are
Well, it's not
people
true. I'm assuming people in North Korea aren't talking highly of their state. Well, actually, I take that back. They probably are because they're forced to. But people in America aren't forced to talk highly about America. But we're our obviously our country is born of migration, right? Like, and so people want to come to America. People don't want to go to North Korea.
um, I'm curious, core value wise, would you say some of the core values are of the company or staples of your culture?
Sure, sure. I think that the people is first, right? And our first core value is actually people first. And so we've obviously talked about that one, and that's important for us. I think open communication is another big one for us, right? Integrity is another big one. Integrity is important in construction because there are a lot of companies out there that cut corners when it comes to construction, especially in the asphalt industry. And so making sure that we're giving customers what they're paying for, what they're asking for, what they expect is a big one, right? And so um, also attitude is a huge one for us, and it's not only the attitude of the leadership, right, but it's the attitude of all the team members and how they show up, because that affects the team in general. If you're not showing up with a positive attitude, generally that's going to affect others around you. If you're a toxic individual, a lot of times that's going to make others around you feel, toxic in a certain way. So, that's a big one. The other one for us is safety, and I think that's generally true for most construction companies, and I think it should be important for construction companies is safety. Um, and Off the top of my head, that's the most important ones for us.
What is if someone was gonna uh like live the opposite of integrity within the context of your business? What are some examples of that? Or yeah.
I think construction companies, especially in the asphalt industry, have gotten a bad name for cutting corners, right? There's not a lot of oversight in the private works portion of the asphalt and concrete industry, especially if you're not doing work for public works, organization, municipalities, the transportation districts, those kinds of things. A lot of times we don't have inspectors on our job sites, right? And so we're having to check our work in different ways, whether that's verifying that materials have been used, whether that's measuring depths of repairs, whether that's showing, hey, here's X amount of gallons used on the seal code. And so without those checks and balances, there can be a lot of corners cut. And so that's one of the reasons I think we've been so successful as a company, is that we try to provide our customers with as much knowledge and education on here's what a good product looks like, and make sure that, hey, come out, welcome that out onto a job site to see what we're doing, to not only see, to verify that this is the work being completed, but to come and see that so they can educate themselves and know more about it, so that during the bidding process they can make sure that they're bidding correctly, but then also when the job is being completed, make sure that it turns out right, even if it's not us doing the work.
Hmm. What, were you nervous to become the CEO?
I think if you're not nervous, there's a problem, right? And the reason I say that is because as a CEO of any size organization, there's a huge amount of responsibility. And it's not just responsibility to the organization itself by keeping it financially healthy, but you have responsibility to the people. And if we're going to make people first in our organization, that is a huge responsibility. And it's not just your direct team members, right? Say you got 50 people working for you. Well, their families really are your responsibility as well, making sure that that employee has enough to take home to his family, to care for his family, right? And so I think, to answer your question, yeah, absolutely, I was nervous, man. And I think any CEO should be nervous in a good, healthy, anxious way of making sure that they're educating themselves properly, that they're doing the things that are responsible for the organization itself. But but yeah, absolutely, man.
What's your take on personal responsibility?
In what sense?
Like if you were in the sense of Do you believe it's important?
Absolutely. I think as individuals we have to be responsible, and that's not only to ourselves, and that's holding ourselves responsible with whatever the daily tasks are, but then holding others responsible as well, holding them personally responsible for certain things. And I think that's also the one of the goals of a CEO is not only to keep themselves responsible for things, but to keep others responsible for things, and to make sure that checks and balances are in place. That, if, hey, if you're not doing your job, let's sit down, let's talk about it, right? And let's figure out a solution, right? Let's figure out a way forward. And at the end of the day, if there's not a way forward, and all efforts have been made to improve the situation, then we have a personal responsibility to the organization, and that's to make sure that it stays alive, so that all of the people that it serves can stay alive as well.
How do you have those conversations? What's worked for you?
I think those are tough conversations, right? But I try and make them as casual as possible, because that's not how we operate as an organization. Is the micromanager, like we're looking over your shoulder. We try and stay as far away from that as possible, and we really try and call ourselves macro managers. Hey, we're going to give you the goals, we're going to give you the way to get there, right? But then the rest is on you. You have to come up with the work ethic. You got to come up with some of the processes on how to get there. We're going to give you the tools to be successful, and we'll always give you the feedback, right? Especially if you're asking the right questions. But you got to be the one that gets up in the morning and goes and get those things done, right? You got to show up with the positive attitude. You got to show up on time for work, right? And so we try not to be the micromanagers at all. We try and be more of the overreaching 10,000 foot, macro manager.
In the first, people that are listening that are in your position, vying for the opportunity to lead a generation before there's culture, their company. How can they earn the respect, the trust, and or each from their patriarch?
And from the patriarch, you mean their leadership group, or from also
So,
their peers as well, like the
oh,
the
well, I
the
would like to break
coworkers?
both down. Yeah, we have listeners that are, in transition. So, like, what would be your advice first from founding ownership? How to earn the trust to be able to, to lead, to steward the business, and then additionally, yeah, I want to go in that direction of peers.
I think it's going to be different, possibly for every organization, right? Because every leadership group probably has their own ideals for what makes a good, employee, what makes a good team member. So I think it would be first figuring out what that means to the CEO, to your direct manager, right? If it's, let's go back to core values. If it's integrity, great. If it's teamwork, if it's communication, figure out what means most to your manager, and then go carry that out through your work, right? But at the end of the day, I think if you show up with a positive attitude, you work hard, I think you're continually learning, right? And every job is different, but if you're doing those three things, usually you're going to have success in the workplace, right? And I think that doubles, for your coworkers as well, right? If you're showing that you want to succeed, right? You have that attitude, you're putting forth the effort, and you're continually learning whatever it is. I mean, even if you're working in a fast food chain, from working at Amazon to working in construction, it's all the same, right? At the end of the day, it is work, right? It is a way to make income for yourself, for your family. And so if you're continually doing those things, I think you're going to impress both your coworkers and your leadership. At the end of the day, we're all humans, no matter if you're in a management position or, if you're below. And so, you know, as humans, we're impressed with largely the same things, right? And at the end of the day, it's getting the job done. And what does it take to get the job done, right? It's to learn, the basics on how to do it, and then go out and carry that out through your daily actions.
Mm. How important has your relationship been in your journey,
My relationship,
like personal relationships?
personal relationships, I think are hugely important, man. And I think if you're truly going to be a people person, right, and you're going to put people first, then relationships are everything, and communication in those relationships is everything. And so for me, I have a huge focus on friendships, on my personal relationships with family, right? My fiance, my parents, my family members, also my community, right? And that's not just local community, but community like Top Contractor School. That's a huge, has had a huge impact on my life. And so I think no matter where your relationships are, focusing on growing those relationships. And in turn, it's funny when you help grow other people and grow other relationships, usually you're going to grow yourself, right? And you're going to learn in two ways. You're going to learn from people what are the good ways to act, the good ways to do, the values that you see in people that are good. You're also going to see the unhealthy habits, the bad, the poor, from people. And so you're going to learn what you don't like and what you do like from people, right? But if you focus on relationships, I think you're going to have huge success, not only within your personal life, but also in your business life.
What about what are your thoughts on hard work? How do you define it for yourself? What type of perspective would you give to our listeners of what it takes to really run a company?
Yeah, that's a good question because everyone, it's almost like it's like a popular phrase, man. Just go work hard, have a good work ethic, right? And so thinking about, what does it take for hard work? I'm not sure you can really define hard work because I think it's going to be different for everyone, right? There's focused hard work. Well, I'm going to set aside 4 hours of intense focus and turn off my cell phone and make sure that all 4 hours are as productive as they can be. Some others think hard work is less productivity, less focus within a certain time period, but drawn out over 12, 14, 16 hours in a day. Well, to some people those are both hard work, right? And so I think it's going to be different for everyone, but I think at the end of the day it's setting goals for yourself, setting the actions necessary to complete those goals, the daily activity necessary to complete those goals, and making sure that that daily activity is getting carried out, right? And if it is, great. If you're overreaching on your goals, right? Or sorry, if you're reaching your goals too quickly, maybe your goals aren't set hard, high enough. And so, I think hard work can be different for everyone, right? But um,
How would one know if they're not working?
that's a good question. I think everyone knows if they're not working hard. I think deep down, you have a
Ooh,
you have a knowledge of
contract.
what you're. I think you have a knowledge of what you're capable of, and I don't think that everyone has the same capacity for work, for growth, for learning, and that's just
That's a
innate
good one.
as human beings, right? We probably all have a little different capacity for
How do we
whatever.
get someone to listen to them to themselves when they're not?
Hmm. I don't know. Maybe I'll turn that around on
You're a philosopher, man. I like asking
you.
philosophical questions because you no, you have a really good point. Like we know when we're not working hard enough, but yeah, how what if we're not listening to ourselves? That's what if we're not listening to ourselves?
I think everyone as human beings, we get caught up too much in the day to day, right? And there's so much information coming out at us through social media, through the news, through just people everywhere, right? A lot of times we don't sit in silence and think, right, and grow ourselves. And so I think it as someone who wants to grow, right, and I think that's the first step, is a desire to grow and desire to listen to yourself, but you have to sit in silence, right, and get by yourself and really be introspective with, hey, I want to grow. Okay, what is it going to take to get there, right? And I think a lot of people just go too fast, and maybe they get caught up too much with just the hard work. and
How do
and
you do or go ahead, sorry.
yeah, instead of focusing on, all right, let's be smart about how we're going to grow, right? Not just go out and work hard.
Get caught in the growth phase.
Yeah.
You've been reading since you were young. How do you balance the time working on yourself in that capacity and all of the natural reactivity that comes with being the lead, the head honcho?
I definitely struggle with the balance idea, and that's something that I've been working on the last few months. I wouldn't say that my life is perfectly balanced right now, and I'm not sure that life is ever meant to be in perfect balance. And I think that balance is different for everyone, right? I mean, you have different stages in your life. In high school, you're focused on schooling. As you get out into the world after high school, college, you're focused on your professional and workforce development, right? Focus on making more money. When you get into your 30s and 40s, maybe that focus turns to kids. When you get into your 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe that focus turns into retirement, into your grandkids, right? And so I think at any point in time, balance can be different. And I think right now, for me, my balance is definitely towards making sure that I'm setting myself and our family up, and my fiance up for a good life in the future. And I think a lot of that comes from financial success, right? Making sure that we've created a good foundation for ourselves and for our future kids and grandkids, right? And so the balance is definitely shifted that way right now, and I think in the future it'll shift another way.
I wrote down something, maybe post this on threads, where we are balanced perfectly 6 feet underground. You never saw it twisted, but that's what came to mind. It's a good
Well,
answer.
that's your final resting place, man. That's when you finally achieve balance, right?
Yeah, like I'm not in control of everything that's going to happen. I have to respond to it. And I don't know what to do most of the time. That's why I'm doing these podcasts.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what we
Um,
talked about earlier. Your personal growth, your reading, your audiobooks is going to shift more now. The time's going to shift more towards the podcast. And so I think through whatever stage in life, your balance is constantly shifting. And I think that is a product of your priorities too in life. What are we setting, our attention towards? Is it towards personal growth? Is it towards professional growth? Is it towards spiritual growth? Is it towards financial growth? Is it towards our relational growth, with people? I think that there's many ways to grow as a human being, and I think everyone's priorities and growth goals are different.
hmm. Where do you see, 10 years from now? Where is AA or A squared? Action Asphalt.
I like that. Maybe that's a new tagline for us.
Where, like what's driving you?
I think the goal for us is just to impact as many people as possible, and to help as many of our clients as possible, right? And that's through making our projects as seamless and as easy and as stress free for them, taking as much time and worry and anxiety about these projects because they are a big impact to the properties that we serve. When we go into a property, generally we do more reconstruction, right? Where we're going into a property that is either has a tenant in it, it's a big retail, office, industrial complex, or it's a big HOA community with all the homes have people living in them, right? A big apartment complex. And so what we do has a large impact on the tenants and the residents, right? And so as property managers, these projects scare them a lot, and so we're trying to make that as easy
Really?
as possible for them. And so it's really trying to take our services, what we do, serving people in that capacity, to as many people in the California, Nevada area that we can, right? And so I don't know what that looks like in a 10 or 15-year period. We obviously have our financial goals that we'd like to set, our revenue, profitability, all the fun stuff that you do as a company, right? But I think really what the main thing we want to do is to continue our focus on people, right? Serving our community, making sure our team members are taken care of, and at the end of the day, making sure that our clients are taken care of, and then everything else will fall into place.
How old are you in 15 years?
I'll be 47 in 15 years.
Do you plan on having a children or a child?
Absolutely, man. I can't wait. Yeah, yeah. Megan and I are planning on having at least two or three kids, so that'll be fun. I think that's gonna shift my balance for sure.
What do you think they're going to say about your 47-year-old self?
Well, I hope that they look at their dad, and they see someone that they want to be like, right? And like we talked about earlier about you learn from people in two ways. You either emulate the things that you like about them, or you learn about the things that you don't like about them and you try and do the opposite, right? And so my goal would be to be
Yeah.
the person that my kids emulate, right? Hey, dad did these things well, right? There, he had these, core values that he did real well. And so I really want to be like dad. And I think, your reputation is everything as well, right? Did you have a good reputation in your personal relationships and also in your business relationships? And, I want to make sure that as as a dad, right, but also as a company and in the community, our reputation is good so that our kids have something good to come into, and not a company or a family that has a bad reputation.
What advice do you have for the late 20s, early 30s, people that are listening that want to be successful and are having a hard time focusing because of their peers that might
Mm-hmm.
not be as why
I think,
old soul or
and I mean, I think that people have a hard time focusing in general. I don't know if it's just from their peers right now or if it's just a product of the environment we live in, right? There's so much information that's coming at us at a given day. And I think you really have to sit down and figure out what your priorities are, like we talked about. And I think there's so much noise around us that's constantly thrown at us, especially in the younger generation, because they have that access to social media at such a young age. And the social media is having an impact and an influence on their lives. And so they need to sit down and go, hey, what are my priorities? What do I want to do with my life? And I don't think a lot of young people have that figured out, right? And that's going to look different for everyone, right? Like we talked about, it might not be professional or financial growth. It might be, hey, I want to be the best family member, the best mom, the best dad that I could possibly be, or whatever it is. I want to be the best community member that I could possibly be, whether it's, just in the community at large, some charity, some church, right? I think you have to figure out what your goals are and what your growth goals are, and then focus on what it takes to get there, right? Like we talked about.
hmm. What about how does how have you been able to earn the respect of people much greater your senior that either work for you or could be clients? What's some advice that you have?
Try not to be the expert, right? Try to learn from people and ask questions. I think it comes down a lot of times just to communication basics, right? Ask questions, want to learn about people in whatever capacity that is. And it doesn't have to be some business tycoon that you're learning from. It could just be, someone that's 70, 80 years old, right? That has wisdom through the ages, right? That's learned a lot of life lessons along the way. And at the end of the day, people want to talk about themselves. And so if you can get people talking about themselves, generally, funny how it works, they're going to like you. If you don't say anything in a conversation and you just ask questions, it's funny how people will generally like you more than if you're the one that has to be asked the questions, right? If you're the one continually talking in a conversation, usually it's funny, people don't like that person.
Hmm. Oh, what are you reading now?
I've got like 8 different books that I'm reading at one time, and I think I learned that from you, that sometimes just
Has
focus
that
on.
helped?
I think it has. I really think it has, because sometimes your focus for growth isn't on a certain thing at the moment. It might be like sales at the moment. You want to learn something more about. Great, go dive into that. And then if something else pops into your head, hey man, I really need to work on my communication, or I got this problem with this one employee and I can't figure out how to deal with it. Right, go read a psychology book. And so I think it's okay to bounce around. I think one of the top books that I'm reading right now is called Top of Mind. And
Oh,
I really enjoy that book. It is a book on leadership. And so, as the leader of our company now, that's what I have been personally trying to grow as much as I can, because I am a young leader, right? And so I want to consume as much information as I can and then carry that out in my day to day. And I think that is also one of the problems with reading, though. It can be consuming too much and then not putting that into action, right? And it kind of goes back to like the phrase like being conference, right? You can also go to too many conferences. You can have too many mentors. You can have too much information coming at you and actually not put any of it into practice, right? So I think that's one thing that I actually learned
Great.
over time. And even just in the last few years, right? Like I came into the group that we're part of, Top Contractor School, and um, I tried to learn as much as I could, but I didn't put any of it into practice, right? Or I put small pieces into practice, but taking that information and actually putting things into practice is the most important part of the learning, right? You can learn it all and store it all in your head, but if you're not carrying it out day to day, what's the point of the learning?
Yeah, it's if I'm going to be a consumer in one medium, I better damn well be a creator in mine.
Well, I think that there's a lot of consumers out there right now. And look at how big social media has gotten. Well, how many on social media are actually creators? Well, a much smaller percentage than our consumers.
Though, when I don't wish this on anybody, but if you go in some cities, you'll see like there's that one section of town where people are kind of walking around like zombies. That's the visual that I get every time I look at Instagram.
It sounds like San Francisco.
Oh, does it? Does it look like that?
Downtown, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the visual I get. And then like maybe one out of 1,000 of the people walking around on that platform might have just come off, just gotten clean. And then it could be like a friend for life.
I think that's a pretty
That's
accurate analogy there. uh,
yeah, it's an interesting way to kind of veer to the close here. I was going to ask about how did you get in contact with the school? Like, were you searching for mentorship a handful of years ago prior to that uh, leadership responsibility, or was it thrown on you, or did it happen like an epiphany, or you read some book, or what? How did that all take place?
I think consciously I was not searching, but subconsciously, like I knew I needed, some help to grow, both personally and professionally, to help grow our business, right? And so, um, when I first, came across Brian's profile actually and saw some of the stuff that he was doing, I think subconsciously I was like, man, I need this in my life, right? I need to continue to learn and grow. Consciously though, I've always been, hey, a learner, I want to grow, right? But I think that that's kind of morphed into realizing the immense value of having mentorship, right? Having mentors in your life. And I think also it's important to not only not have, just one mentor that you're looking at, right? And that you're learning from and that you're growing from, because, there's experts in every single industry. And so I think for me, my one of my first mentors really was Brian Hess, and then it's morphed into a lot of the guys and gals in Top Contractor School. And to be honest, Jay, like from a distance, like for learning, you've been a bit of a mentor, like as far as watching your growth and how you, yeah, absolutely. And it's true though. I mean, the amount of information that you are able to consume and how you consume it, and watching, all the audiobooks that you're listening to, right? That you post on Instagram, and looking through your different reading lists, right? And seeing your strategy for consuming information. Like I would say you're a mentor from a distance, right? But probably just for that one aspect right now, right? Because we're just getting to know each other on a deeper level, and maybe it turns into something more. But I think to that point, you have to pick mentors in different, you know, regions of improvement, right? And not just business, but personally. And you could break business into a mentor for marketing, a mentor for sales, a mentor for finance, right? But then at the end of the day, making sure that when you are consuming that information that a mentor is giving you, right, the knowledge, making sure that you're putting those things into action at the end of the day.
I wrote this. I don't know if we'll look back on this and laugh, but he who has one and only one mentor has met Satan. Like there's a closeness about that. Yeah, I don't know. It's like,
Who said that?
oh no, I just thought of that right now because you were talking. I
Yeah,
like to write down. Now I'm starting to write down like epiphanies that come about from these shows. Like I'm learning from you right now,
yeah.
and then I'll post them on threads later. Sometimes I forget. Yeah, I'm trying to. But that's something that that's a really powerful thought, right? If I'm only, there's too much power in that to only have one mentor. Um, it's like, am I really as open as I think I am if I only am allowing myself to have one?
Hmm.
What does that mean? That's what comes to mind when you. I gotta say it's really a blessing to get to know you, and it's very exciting just to think about where you, your family, and your company is going to be in 10 years because uh, I think I consider you a very self-aware, thoughtful person, and I appreciate you coming on the show. This is a very good episode. I'm going to really re-listen to. I did want to know what kind of thing did Bill, your father, sell when he was the VP of the? What was he selling?
He sold sealants for the aeronautical industry, and then also for the like RV transportation. They did like window sealants and that kind of stuff.
And
And
okay, yeah, I wanted to ask that earlier.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and then before that, he's always been in sales. So I will say that I've gotten most of my sales knowledge from him. Before that, I think he had a career of probably 40 years in some sales aspect before he really started, Action Asphalt, right? And so,
Wow.
it was printers, copiers, that kind of stuff, sealants, right? Really anything and everything, tires. I mean, anything you can think of. And so, I think as a good salesperson too, you have to be a good communicator and you have to be
Hmm.
good with people, right? And so, I think that's one of the main things that my dad has taught me is how to be a good communicator, how to be good with people, and really selling is influence, right? And influence is how you connect with people. And so if you're not connecting with people, generally you don't have influence, and generally you're
Hmm.
you're not going to get a sale. And so for I think that's a lot of where my focus on people has come from is my dad.
Well, that's an interesting thought because uh am I connected am I connecting with people or are they connecting with me if they're watching my videos?
Mm, yeah, that's huge. And I think the other aspect of it is empathy. How are you showing empathy to people? How are you showing that you care? And that's another form of connection. And I will say, that my mom taught me that side of that, right? And so I would say they're both mentors of mine, right? And you can have mentors in many different facets, but showing empathy and showing care for people and listening would be something that my mom taught me. And so I think you learn a lot from, your parents, from your friends, from those that you surround yourself with, right? And I try and surround myself with good people that I'm going to learn from, right? And I've been very blessed to have good parents
Wow.
that have taught me things, right? And not everyone is blessed with that, right? But then go find friends, go find mentors that you can surround yourself with that, can teach you those things.
What's your word for 2023?
Take action. That's two words, but
That's what
action.
it was, or that's what they based
It's
on what
funny because so I got that award in January, the Take Action Award, and so I've actually made it
wow.
my word for this year is take action, and it's working so far, man. But sometimes when you take action on too many things, your balance falls out, right? And so right now we're juggling a lot of balls, and it's good, but we're running 100 miles an hour, and we're trying to keep up, and
Hmm.
that's part of business, man.
I'm so excited we finally got to do this. If you're listening to this episode, I challenge you to re-listen to it. Follow my friend Travis Stokes. What's your Instagram?
Travis underscore Travis Stokes underscore.
You're gonna see a lot of well, first you have to ask yourself, are you one of those zombies walking around out there? Try not to be too much. Reach out to him. And yeah, man, thanks for coming on the show. Please leave a review on the Culture Matters podcast. and we will see you next time.
Appreciate you, Jay. I appreciate the time and all the care you put into developing people, man. You're an amazing, amazing man.
Thanks. Thank you. If you want to say anything else, I'll keep going.
That's all I got, man.
And we will
No,
see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.